All right, what's up? It was a blast bringing Word of Josh, or as I like to call it when I'm doing live, Monday Night Josh, to Facebook Live last week. So I had so much fun, got a great feedback, and thanks to everyone who listened. So I figured, why not? Let's bring it back for round number two and do Monday Night Josh, January 11th, 2021. It's a little weird for me that I'm actually choosing to do this tonight. And I thought about not because, well, the national championship's going on, but, well, I haven't really watched much college football. And I got to be honest, I'm a little bit tired of Alabama and Ohio State and Clemson. Like, I think what's kind of injured my interest, if you will, in college football is the fact that it's like the same three or four teams every year vying for the national title, and it's just not my thing. So, not that I won't watch, not that I won't watch highlights, not that I won't study the different players and things like that. But quite frankly, I watched so much football this weekend. I wasn't really that concerned with seeing the game. So kind of not cool of me. And I'm sure some people are like, "What's the matter with you? You love football," and I do. But I've seen Alabama and Ohio State. Like I said, kind of tired of them always being on top. So, you know, doing something else, doing something fun, having some fun, and thanks to all of you for being here with me tonight. And it's great to be back podcasting. It's a lot of fun. I hope people enjoyed last week. The feedback was great, and thank you to everyone who tuned in, gave some listens, and boy, was it a great weekend for the NFL. And for anyone who's new or this is your first time listening, well, I am definitely an NFL football guy. Love the sport of football. Coached high school football for 10 years. So I do want to say a couple things though, because I'm not an expert, and maybe I try to come across like a know-it-all, and I don't necessarily intend to, but I'm a fan. I'm a huge fan. I love the game. I love the sport. Can I relate to certain things? Yeah. Do I understand concepts when I see them and when they talk about them? Yeah, I do. And do I have opinions on what I would do with it? Sure. But there's a reason why I'm sitting at home on my couch, and no high schools come knocking down my door since I retired from high school football coaching about 10 years ago, and no colleges ever came calling, and the NFL never came calling, much to my chagrin. But hey, that's all right. Still love the game, still love football, and love to talk about football, the business of football. And we're going to get into all that right now because it's been an incredible weekend. They called it the Super Wild Card. And I'm sold, and we're going to talk all about that in just a minute. But the first thing I do want to jump into, it kind of ties into what we talked a little bit about last week with Philadelphia Eagles coach Doug Peterson, or, well, I guess now he's former Philadelphia Eagles coach Doug Peterson, fired by owner Jeff Luria. And Peterson's out after only 5 years with the team. He took the team to the franchise to their first ever Super Bowl during 2017. And, 3 seasons later, he's out. And talk about a fall from grace, and talk about no grace period to get it better. And I hate to say I saw this coming, because again, that kind of goes into that whole I know it all factor. But good Lord, I was convinced last week when the Eagles tanked intentionally that was a franchise decision, that Luria ordered Peterson to play for a draft pick. And whether it's true or not, and whether they're just making Peterson be the fall guy, I don't know. To me, based on what Peterson did during the game against Washington last week, you would think that he was okay with it. The owner was okay with it. Now, the owner apparently, or there's word out there that the owner had no idea that was going to happen, and the owner was furious. I find that a little hard to believe. 3 sides to every story: Peterson's, ownership's, and the truth. So as to what happened, how it happened, why it happened, don't really know. Not sure we're ever going to know. But at this point, what we do know is Doug Peterson's out as head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles. after a 5-year run. Saw him go 46, 39, and 1. Like I said, his team won the Super Bowl 3 short seasons ago. What a difference 3 years makes. And again, it's interesting hearing. You read some of the comments by Jeff Luria, and he talked about. It's interesting. He made a weird comment, which ESPN, I read on ESPN.com, where he talked about, did he deserve to get fired? No, but this is what's best for the team over the next 3, 4, and 5 years, which I thought was a really strange comment. Well, if he didn't deserve to get fired, wouldn't he in your mind be the best thing for the team over the next 3, 4, or 5 years? What happened? Now, there was talk that his relationship with Carson Wentz was fractured, and the word out there is his relationship with Wentz is fractured beyond repair. Well, I really want to know, where does Howie Roseman fit into all of this, because whose decision was it that this past spring, in April of 2020, they used their second-round pick to draft a quarterback? Now, you have Carson Wentz. You used the second overall pick with him in 2016. Yeah, 2016. You used the second overall pick to draft Carson Wentz in 2016. So you draft him, and then you do what? Then, 3 years later, you give him a contract extension, a huge contract, a very large contract. And then a few months after that, he didn't play as well as maybe you thought he should have last year. So you take your second round pick and draft another quarterback. Now, these teams will constantly talk about, with the draft, we draft the best player available. And maybe the Eagles actually were just buying into that philosophy. But it's a little too convenient that all of a sudden you're doing that, because heck, they should have drafted, Lamar Jackson in 2018 coming off the Super Bowl. They didn't do that. There's a lot of things that they didn't do, and there's a lot of players they haven't drafted. And let's be realistic. These teams say, yeah, we draft best player available, but it's best player according to our board. It's always amazing to me that so many teams draft the player that they need. It's always convenient when you draft someone you need who happens to be the best player on your board. Now, look, I've never spent a day in an NFL front office. I've never spent a day scouting. I've never had the opportunity to sit in a war room and watch a draft. But it just seems too convenient. So was Peterson set up to fail with this when they drafted Jalen Hurts? Because to me, if you've drafted Carson Wentz in 2016, you threw all these resources into him, you let go Nick Foles after the 2018 season. So Carson Wentz gets hurt in 2017. Nick Foles comes in off the bench, guides you through the playoffs, Philly special, Super Bowl MVP. Next year earns an all-expenses-paid trip back to the bench. Wentz comes back in. Wentz can't finish the 2018 season, is injured. So Foles comes in, people get excited, and especially in Philadelphia, they were really excited that we're going to see repeat magic. Didn't happen, and then you let Nick Foles go. He winds up going to Jacksonville for 2019, doesn't do much, winds up in Chicago this year, and Chicago's a mess, and we'll talk about them hopefully in a couple minutes. I guess my question is, what was it that was so great about Wentz that you extended him to a long-term deal last year, during the 2018-2019 offseason, gave him a ridiculous contract, a horrible contract based on what his production's been, and then now you fire the coach who helped get you to the Super Bowl. You got a pissed-off quarterback who you spent a first-round draft pick on and gave a big contract to. You have a pissed-off quarterback who you just took in the second round, and supposedly that relationship was ruined between Peterson and both quarterbacks, and there's really no place to go. So the obvious answer was, okay, fine, you get rid of the coach, but what are you going to do next? Who are you bringing in? Who's coming in to salvage this? And quite frankly, you need a hell of a good quarterback coach to work with Wentz. And if you believe in Jalen Hurts, you gotta get a quarterback coach to work with him. I mean, this is a guy who look, he showed some good things, but I wouldn't exactly put Jalen Hurts and Lamar Jackson in the same category. When Jackson came in off the bench a couple years ago, his passing wasn't that good in 2018. You'll have some people argue it's still not that good. I'm not one of them when you look at his statistics and percentages and all that. But one thing Lamar could do is he was so fast and so quick and so dynamic, they still were able to win with him. Jalen Hurts, showed some flashes, but he doesn't have Lamar's speed. He doesn't have Lamar's quickness. I'm not saying he's not fast and he's not quick, but he doesn't have Lamar Jackson's speed and quickness. And something that makes Lamar Jackson so special right now is he is that fast and he is that quick. And that's why you even saw him struggle earlier this year because, like I said last week, I thought he was hurt. So, Jalen Hurts, not happy. Carson Wentz, not happy. Ownership, I guess, decided they weren't happy with the coach, and now he's fired. Doug Peterson fired 8 days after the Philadelphia Eagles 2020 season ended, much to the rejoice of a lot of Eagles fans, and I know that. But I'm really curious to see what happens. Will general manager Howie Roseman get more time? I think he will. I think Lurie is going to give him, another head coach to hire. So I think Roseman will be there for the next few years. Is he the right guy? Who knows? Let's be realistic. When Doug Peterson was first hired, it was coming off the failed, I'm drawing a blank, Chip Kelly experiment from a few years back, 2013, 14, and 15. They got rid of Andy Reid, okay? Because Andy Reid had a bad season in 2012. And I get it, 2011 when they had that dream team wasn't that good. In 2012, look, Eagles had a lot of injuries in 2012, but ultimately Andy Reid had been there for 12, 13 years. It was time to move on. So they moved on. They bring in Chip Kelly. That flopped epically. Major failure. And it didn't work. They go to Peterson. Peterson takes them their first ever franchise Super Bowl, and now 3 years later, and removed from the playoffs by he made the playoffs 3 out of 5 years. It's not like Peterson wasn't winning. He was 46-39-1, and when you look at the fact that this year they were 4-11-1, okay, so coming into this year he was 42-28, something like 42-28. So, he was winning. But your quarterback is your most important player. And in this case for the Eagles, my guess is they're looking at Carson Wentz, they're looking at Jalen Hurts, and they're saying one of these two guys is our future. And quite frankly, I know Eagles fans want them to get rid of Carson Wentz. It is not happening. They are so far over the salary cap. They have such a commitment into Carson Wentz financially, they can't do it. He will be on the Philadelphia Eagles roster in 2021 unless something crazy happens. Is there a possibility? Sure. You never say never, but I believe both Carson Wentz and Jalen Hurts will be on the Philadelphia Eagles roster in 2021. They'll have a new coach. It clearly is going to have to be either someone with an offensive mind or a coach who is very well respected in the mold of a John Harbaugh type, someone who's not this offensive or defensive guru, but, a full-blown coach who can convince ownership that they have the perfect offensive coordinator and quarterback coach combination. Now, if it were me and I were hired as head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles, I'm calling Gary Kubiak and I'm offering him a king's ransom to come to Philadelphia, assuming he's available to hire, because that guy just knows how to get the most out of quarterbacks, and you give him a piece of talent like Wentz or Hurts, I think he'll turn him into a pretty good passer. That's just me. There's a lot of young, innovative coaches out there who also could do the job. So that's my limited view. So Doug Peterson, fired as the Eagles coach. There's now 8 head coaching vacancies. We haven't seen anything else happen. There's even suspicion on my part, and I definitely know it's out there on the national media, is Chicago Bears coach Matt Nagy going to be back? The Bears made the playoffs, but they made it at 8-8. I wouldn't exactly say the Bears are lighting it up. And I still think what's amazing about the Bears is 3 years ago, with the second overall pick in the draft, they draft Mitch Trubisky. Maybe this is 4 years ago. Sorry, getting my years screwed up. Before the 2017 season, they take Mitch Trubisky, and Patrick Mahomes goes 10 picks later. So good job, GM. Good job scouting there. That worked. No. So 2020 hindsight, I suppose. But Mitch Trubisky has not looked like a franchise quarterback. And going back to Carson Wentz for a minute, and we'll get to this when we talk about the Rams in a couple minutes. But how the hell did Jared Goff and Carson Wentz become the number 1 and number 2 overall picks in the 2016 draft? That shows you how much the NFL is a quarterback-driven league, because two guys who were not exactly known throughout all of college football as the world beaters all of a sudden are the number 1 and number 2 overall picks for the NFL draft. That's amazing. I mean, you could even look at the heralded 2018 quarterback draft class. You had Baker Mayfield went 1, but you had people thinking Sam Darnold or Josh Rosen could go 1. No one thought Lamar Jackson would go 1. He didn't. He went 32. Josh Allen went 7, and you could and it's amazing right now. All 3 of those quarterbacks are still in the AFC playoffs, along with Mahomes. So you got 4 quarterbacks in there who are under 25. And then you go over to the NFC, and you've got the geriatric crew with Tom Brady, Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers, and then Jared Goff. So you got Rodgers, who's been in the league since 2005. You've got Drew Brees, who's been in the league since 2000. Tom Brady, who's been in the league since 2000. And then Jared Goff? Jared Goff. Jared Goff stinks. Look, all right, fine. Does he stink? With the right players around him, he'll do well. He'll be a fine quarterback. He's going to be like a Joe Flacco. I think Flacco's a little bit better in terms of the physical tools, but Goff will do some things, and when you put him in an offense with a healthy Todd Gurley, and he had Cooper Kupp, and he had Robert Woods, and he had Brandon Cooks, and he had a good offensive line, and the defense was pretty good, Jared Goff looked like a pretty good quarterback, but then once he got in the Super Bowl, he looked abysmal. And Jared Goff, I guess I got to give him credit, right? Because he came in off the bench with an injured thumb. I mean, he had thumb surgery a couple weeks ago. I'm not going to say he's not tough. He had a couple screws put in his thumb, and now he's got his hand under the quarterback's ass, and he's taking football snaps, onto his hands and going back and throwing a football with screws in your hands fresh out of surgery a couple weeks. I can't imagine his hand feels very good after a game. So you got those two, and then you've got, the geriatric crew, like I said, with Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, and Tom Brady. And then over in the AFC, you've got the fountain of youth. You got Patrick Mahomes, you got Lamar Jackson, you got Josh Allen, and then you got the old man on the river, Baker Mayfield, who's only 26. He's the oldest of the 4 quarterbacks that are still in the playoffs in the AFC. It's amazing. And what's going to happen? What will happen? Because we're going to get into the super wild card round right now. Boy, was this fun this weekend. I tell you, I was not excited about adding a 7th playoff team. But you know what? Here's what I'm saying. Let's add an 8th playoff team. Let's get rid of the first round bye altogether. And let's have 4 wild card games per day. 4 on Saturday, 4 on Sunday. You could start football at 10 a.m. for all I care. Have a 10 a.m., a 1 a.m., a 10 a.m., a 1 p.m., a 4 p.m., and an 8 p.m. on Saturday, and then do it all over again on Sunday. 10 a.m. football would probably stink, and if you're on the left coast, it would really stink because you'd have to get up at 7 for a football game. But all things considered, I loved the super wild card concept. I thought it was awesome. I love the fact that there were 3 wild card teams each game. I like that there's only 1 team with a bye. It really makes getting the best record in your conference mean something, especially when you started to see teams tank this weekend. Last weekend, and you started to see teams, rest their players. We'll get to that when we talk about Pittsburgh and Cleveland in a minute. So I love the concept. I love that there were 3 games Saturday. I love that there were 3 better games Sunday. Lot of fun. Just loved it. I even liked the Nickelodeon game cast that they did for the Bears-Saints game, which was all kid-friendly. And then I liked when they, when the team scored a touchdown, they had like the slime zone and graphics, and they were explaining to kids about the game of football. What a great thing for the NFL. I mean, sure, is it more money? Probably. They're on more networks, different broadcasts. But there were so many ways to watch some of these supercasts between Nickelodeon and ESPN Plus and the different types of analysis you could listen to, whether you wanted to listen to the live coverage or you wanted to watch the Nickelodeon cast. They even had kids explaining different rules and what did offsides mean or what is pass interference. All this stuff. It was awesome. And then you had 6 games, and most of those games were really freaking good. It was fun football to watch. It was great football to watch. I loved it. Started off great with the Colts-Bills. Thought it was a great game. 27-24. I think the Indianapolis Colts represented themselves well and did exactly what I said they were going to do. They made it a hell of a football game, and it was not a gimme for the Bills. The Bills had to work hard and play hard in order to win that game. The Colts there have got to be Colts fans so frustrated right now because if Andrew Luck had not retired unexpectedly way early, the Colts might be the best football team in football. That is how critical the quarterback position is. That is how critical the quarterback position is. It is so important. And Phillip Rivers, yeah, he's probably going to the Hall of Fame. He's had an amazing career, but Phillip Rivers has been playing since 2004. There's a lot of miles on those tires. There's a lot of wear and tear on that body. And let's be realistic here. Phillip Rivers has never gotten a team to the promised land. Andrew Luck had that ability. Andrew Luck had that will. Andrew Luck had that leadership. Andrew Luck had those tools, and his body was just beat up because Ryan Grigson, or whatever his name was, just ruined his prime with poor drafting and poor free agencies, and Andrew Luck took such a beating that he left. But if you're looking at what the Indianapolis Colts are now, with an amazing offensive line, when healthy, because they had some injuries, particularly down the stretch, that team looked really good. But hey, Buffalo, hats off to you. Played a great game, balanced, good offense, good defense, good special teams. The Bills Mafia's going nuts. They're thrilled. They're happy. They're off to the next round. They got a date this coming weekend with the Ravens. We'll talk about that in a couple minutes. So that's how we kicked off football this weekend. And then we moved on to Seattle and the Rams. And I got to admit, I was stunned by that outcome. I did not think the Rams had a chance. Now, maybe I should have. And maybe that's on me because the Rams have a terrific defense. They've got arguably the best defensive player in football, Aaron Donald. Now, I heard someone compare him to Lawrence Taylor this weekend. I'm not ready to go there yet. But man, he's in the conversation with the all-time greats. And why he's not getting more talk as NFL MVP is beyond me. Other than the NFL MVP never goes to anyone on defense, right? I mean, if it did, Ray Lewis would have won it 1 or 2 times, or maybe Ed Reed, or maybe James Harrison. I mean, my God, or Troy Polamalu. I mean, these are guys who were the best players in football. You take Troy Polamalu off some of those Steeler teams 10 years ago, and they're still good teams, but man, Troy Polamalu was something special. Ray Lewis was something special. Aaron Donald is that special. Aaron Donald is working on his ticket to the Hall of Fame. And Jalen Ramsey, while I'm not a fan of how he acted and forced his way out of Jacksonville, one of the best cornerbacks in the game, if not right now, the best cornerback in football. And so the Rams have the defense where they can win every game. Now, Seahawks, to me, it's more about what's happened to the Seahawks. And the biggest thing with the Seahawks is you think about the Seahawks, you think defense, you think the Legion of Boom, you think those great Seattle Seahawks defenses that we saw in the early part of the last decade. They're gone. I mean, Cam Chancellor, gone. Earl Thomas, obviously gone. Cliff Averill, gone. Richard Sherman, gone. The defense is pretty much turned over. Bobby Wagner's still there. He's a nice player. They still have some decent guys, but they're not a dominant defense. And then the offense in the last few weeks of the season just sort of stopped. I mean, Russell Wilson looked like a surefire hit for the MVP. That's done. That's not happening. I think the MVP is either Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen. Don't really care who wins because, quite frankly, I don't even like the fact that they picked the MVP before the MVP, like before the playoffs even happen. How ridiculous is that? We're going to pick a league MVP. The playoffs haven't even happened. So you've got the Seahawks. They don't have much of a defense, and their offense just fell apart. Their running game wasn't as solid as it can be. Darrell Lockett and DK Metcalf look like the unstoppable duo, and DK Metcalf is like a man. He's like a man among men. I mean, with the way he's built and his athleticism and his strength and his speed, I said it on Facebook, I think he's going to be potentially the best wide receiver in football next year. He is special, and he's only in year 2. That's what's amazing. And what's up, Zach? Great to have you listening, bud. Thank you so much for your support. Appreciate everyone listening. Thank you. So the Seahawks, Russell Wilson looked like surefire Hall of Famer, or not Hall of Famer, MVP of the league. He's probably going to go to the Hall of Fame too. But all of a sudden, their offense just sort of stopped. If you look at the last few weeks of the season, and yeah, they were 12-4, they got into the playoffs, but look at what their offense was doing. The Giants kind of exposed them a little bit at the beginning of December and kind of gave you a blueprint on how to slow them down. And the Rams accentuated that. The Rams caused turnovers, and look, when you can get turnovers, and especially when you can cause a pick six at a critical time in a game and swing that momentum, which the Rams did. It took the Seahawks out of their game. They started forcing things quick, and all of a sudden the Rams are moving on to the next round of the playoffs. Now, you move on to the night game of Super Saturday. Okay, we had the Washington football team, and we had Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And God, how weird was it seeing Tom Brady in anything but a Patriots uniform? And I get it. I've seen it all season. But come on. It was weird seeing Tom Brady in that Tampa Bay red. I really was hoping they'd bring back the old creamsicle uniforms and the big sombrero stuff, but no such luck. I really thought that the Bucs were going to absolutely destroy Washington, and not because Washington's not necessarily a good football team. They have a pretty good defense. Their defensive line is scary, and they have the makings of a really good defense. They're a linebacker short, maybe a really good corner short of being the next big defense. Like, that's how, and they've got the right coach to have the next big defense in Ron Rivera. So Washington did a lot of good things, but coming into the game, well, there were rumors late in the week that Alex Smith's calf had retightened up and he wasn't going to be able to play, and that happened. Alex Smith was inactive, so we had Taylor Heineke, who no one's ever heard of before. He was taking online college courses a few weeks ago until the Redskins called him in, particularly after they got rid of Dwayne Haskins. And all of a sudden, Taylor Heineke is starting for the Washington football team in their first playoff game in a few years in a spot against Tom Brady's Bucs. And Taylor Heineke held his own. He played really, really well, to the point that Washington fans all over the place are saying, we need to sign this guy. And look, I'm trying to see, what do they mean by we need to sign this guy? Is this your quarterback of the future? Or is this a guy you want to sign, see what he can do next year in camp, and see what he can do? But he played really, really well Saturday night against the Bucs. He played really, really well, did a lot of good things, and I think I can't even get it right. I think Washington fans have every right to be excited about the kid and the way he played after watching Dwayne Haskins most of the year, and then they had Kyle Allen. The kid went 26 of 44 for 306 yards, threw a touchdown, threw a pick, but he also added 46 rushing yards and ran a touchdown in. That's great for a kid who wasn't even in the NFL a couple weeks ago, and comes in and does it on the national stage, primetime Saturday night against Tom freaking Brady. And Washington held their own. They lost 31-23. They had a chance to win that game. They didn't get it done, but I think the future's pretty bright for Washington with Ron Rivera as their coach. They got almost $50 million in salary cap space. This is not a team that's going to disappear. They've got great pieces up front. They've got they got Sweat, they got Chase Young, they got all these monsters up front. They can pass rush. They can stop the run. They are a good defensive line. I think they really are short one really good linebacker and could use a little bit of an upgrade at the cornerback position. But overall, if I'm a Washington fan, I am excited as long as my stupid Neanderthal owner just sits in the owner's box, shuts up, and stays out of the way and has football people doing football jobs. If he can do that, his team is going to be in the playoffs next year with a much better record than 7-9 and probably win a game because, let's face it, Tom Brady and Tampa Bay won by 8 and Washington could have legitimately won that football game. But part of the reason they didn't is Tom Brady is still Tom Brady. Now, I know there's people who hate Tom Brady, and I get that. He won 6 Super Bowls in 20 years. That's not really hatred, that's envy. Because when someone's that good, we tend to envy him. But Tom Brady was 22 for 40, 381 yards, 2 touchdowns. But he did have -2 rushing yards. Let's make sure we give all the stats here. Okay? Tom Brady is Tom Brady. Tom Brady is the greatest quarterback of this generation, and he's up there as greatest quarterback of all time. Now, I would still love to know if you were innocent, why'd you destroy your cell phone? But, we won't go there. But Tom Brady led the Bucs. Do I think the Bucs are going to go on and go to the Super Bowl? No. There's something about them that also doesn't impress me. I don't know what it is. I don't feel like they dominate. I don't feel like they're in full control of a game. Their defense, I know they were missing a couple of players this weekend, didn't look as strong as they could be. And how is Tampa Bay going to play if they have to go up to New England or Green Bay for the AFC Championship and it's -4 degrees and they got to put on a pair of ice skates and skate around Lambeau Field? How about that? How cool would that be if it's Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers finally in a big game like that in the NFC Championship and they're both eligible for AARP at this point in football years, folks. I get it. One's 43, one's 38. But in the NFL, they're old. Okay? So, Tom Brady, he's got all the weapons. They've got a running game. They've got Leonard Fournette. They've got Mike Evans, who is absolutely outstanding. 7 consecutive seasons with 1,000 yards to start his career. Mike Evans also looks like his body's taking a beating, and he looked like he was hurting. Antonio Brown starting to do some more things with them. There's a lot of weapons there. They got Brady, they got Gronk, they got all these weapons, and they still struggled to beat the 7-9 Washington football team. So I'm just not sold on them. They're going to play Drew Brees and the Saints this weekend. Should be a lot of fun to see those two quarterbacks go at it. Tom Brady, Drew Brees. Again, it's like you look at the NFC and it's, the senior citizens club with Brady and Brees and Rodgers. And then in the AFC, you've got the Fountain of Youth boys with Mahomes and Baker Mayfield and Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. It's amazing how different it is. A lot of fun to watch, too. So Saturday was awesome. It was great. And the best part about Saturday was you get to go to sleep, wake up Sunday, and do it all over again. And you have 3 more exciting games. And what a better way to start it than with the Baltimore Ravens. And, since I'm a Ravens guy, I'm going to come back to the Ravens. And we're going to do that game last. So, Bears, Saints, I'm going to save your time. The Bears had no business being in the playoffs. The Bears were 8-8. They weren't very good. Look, they earned the spot, yes, but if there was ever, an argument as to why the playoffs shouldn't have expanded, it was the NFC, and if there was ever a reason why the playoffs should have expanded, it was the AFC. Okay, the worst team in the AFC playoffs was 11-5, and then in the NFC you had the 7-9 Washington team, the 8-8 Bears. It just was not good. Okay, now the number 6 seed Rams, yeah, they got to win. So, look, but the 6 seed, they would have been there as a 6 seed. The Bears looked terrible. The Bears were terrible. Did the Saints dominate them as much as I thought they should have? No, but Chicago's defense is pretty good. Their offense is just a joke. And their offense isn't ready for the big boys. They've got pieces. They don't have the quarterback. I'm not sure they have the right scheme for the players they've got. Will Matt Nagy be fired? Probably not. Should he be? No, the guy's had 3 years. These owners have got to show some patience. And they've got to understand that the front office is handicapping them sometimes with the players that are picked up. And it's just, these things take some time. You cannot build a roster all the time in a franchise that's consistent and is going to consistently win for years in 2 or 3 years. Because will it happen sometime? Sure. Is it going to happen a lot? No. Teams will eventually mortgage their franchise. So that's all I really have on the Saints Bears game. Didn't care, didn't like it. Moving on to games that actually mean something. So let's start with the two teams with the worst colors in football. You've got the Cleveland Browns, who basically wear orange. And then you've got the Pittsburgh Steelers, who wear gold. I get it. They're both two iconic franchises. But watching the yellow pants of the Steelers and the orange pants of the Browns, I wanted sunglasses. All I wanted while I watched that game were sunglasses, because you had the freaking yellow mustard seats at Heinz Field. You had Pittsburgh in their yellow pants. You had the Browns in their orange pants. And all I wanted was a pair of sunglasses. But I was too lazy to get off the couch and go get them. So I just watched the game. And boy, what a game that was. I mean, you almost feel bad for the players that there weren't fans in the stand for that, because you have Cleveland jumping out to a 28-0 lead. And I don't know if anybody in Cleveland or anybody else watching that game wasn't constantly thinking about, yeah, this is the Browns, and they'll still do Browns-like things. No one would have been surprised this morning if they would have woken up and the Cleveland Browns would have blown that 28-0 lead, right? Nobody would have been surprised. Nobody. No one would have been surprised had Cleveland blown it, because that's kind of what they've done for their life. And let's face it, they wound up only winning by 11. They won 48-37, but here's the thing to keep in mind. The Browns won. They had lost 17 straight games at Heinz Field. 17, and they play there once a year because they haven't been in the playoffs since 2002. 17 straight games. That's 17 years. 17 years, depending upon whether you're starting in 2020 or 2021, 2003, 2004. That is a long time to never win when you play at that team stadium every year. The Browns had a lot of different things, so they had that going for them. They had their first playoff appearance ever in this decade, obviously, but since 2002. And this is only their second playoff appearance since returning to the league in 1999 after a 3-year hiatus. So it's a big deal in Cleveland. There's a lot to live up to for those players. They had Juju Smith-Schuster of the Steelers talking trash this week. Oh, the Browns are being the Browns. And, Juju talked a lot of trash all season, and I was kind of disappointed. He'd always seemed like a nice kid, a quiet kid. He was the kid who dressed up as himself, wore his own uniform, and went trick-or-treating as a 21-year-old. I thought that was pretty cool. But all of a sudden this year, he sort of found his diva side and talked a lot of trash and talked a lot of smack. So when the Steelers lost, I wasn't upset that Juju Smith-Schuster had to deal with a loss just because of how he behaved. Now, conversely, he personally played a great game. He really played a great game. And, you kind of have to wonder what's going on with Pittsburgh, because everything you saw in the game last night, now granted they're down 28-0, so you're not going to do a lot of running the football, but Pittsburgh abandoned running the football after like 4 or 5 weeks of the season. They just abandoned it, and they threw the ball too much, and the proof is in the pudding last night. Ben Roethlisberger, 47 of 68 for 501 yards passing. Now that's great, but I wouldn't sit here and say that Ben played great. Ben threw 4 interceptions. And I believe every interception led to points for the Browns. So I'm not going to sit here and say Ben Roethlisberger played great because he was 47 to 68 for 500 yards and 4 touchdowns. He threw 4 picks. And Ben missed some critical picks. Ben looked old. Ben looked slow. Ben's arm isn't as strong as it was. He looked beat up. Was that the last we saw of Ben Roethlisberger? Maybe. It's really hard to tell. The way things are going to work out for Pittsburgh right now is Ben will count $41 million against their cap next year in the final year of his contract. The only way you're getting that down is if he takes a significant pay cut or they extend him and then sort of mortgage their salary cap future, or they keep him, they play with him under $41 million and just ride out this thing and say we've mortgaged our salary cap for his entire career. If he's going to count $22-23 million against our cap, let's just keep him here, because you're not going to go into next season with Mason Rudolph as your quarterback and expect to win. Now, with or without Ben, the Steelers are in cap hell, and they have a lot of players they have to re-sign. They have a lot of free agents. Bud Dupree, Juju Smith-Schuster, I think TJ Watt is coming up. You know, you can't pay everybody anyway. They got a lot of other high-priced veterans. So whether it's this year or next year, the Steelers are going to have to hit the reset button. But let's talk about the Cleveland Browns, because these guys came out fired up, hungry. First play of the game, ball snapped right over Ben's head, touchdown Browns at 7-0. And all of a sudden, the Browns are up 28-0 with 1 minute and 46 seconds left in the first quarter. That's almost like too big of a lead too quick, because then you have the added, you know, if the Browns didn't have enough pressure already, right? First playoff game since 2002, hadn't beaten the Steelers at Heinz Field in 17 attempts. And now you have this is great, we have a 28-0 lead, but there's 3 quarters left. It's like, you know, if you're up 28-0 at halftime, you're probably feeling pretty good. The Browns had to be thinking, dear Lord, we can't blow this. And they never got that close. But I know at times, you know, they had a few drives where they only took about 1 minute of time off the clock and the Steelers were moving the ball and scoring some points. So those things happened. And it wasn't pretty. But, well, it wasn't pretty because of how they had to play defense, because Cleveland's had a COVID outbreak this week. So think about, that's the one thing I didn't even mention about what Cleveland was dealing with. Their head coach was at home. He was diagnosed with COVID. He couldn't be there. He wasn't allowed to be on the phone. The poor guy sat in his basement. He wouldn't let his wife or kids watch with him. He wanted to watch alone. He even made a comment today saying, now I understand how our fans feel. I have a new respect for fans. So head coach wasn't there. They were missing their offensive line coach, their assistant offensive line coach. They were missing linemen. Okay, Baker Mayfield made a great comment after the game how their normal starting guard was out and the backup guy stepped in. He knew him by name. And then he goes, and some guy named Blake, who I just met in the locker room before the game. I introduced myself to him in the locker room before the game. This kid Blake, no one knows his last name. He's just Blake from the Browns, came in the fourth quarter at a critical time, had to play left guard. And look, by all things considered, he helped get the job done. But those were the odds the Cleveland Browns were fighting this week. And the Cleveland Browns came out and punched the Steelers in the mouth. I mean, they punched them right in the mouth and knocked them out and basically said, that's it for you, you're done. And is it the end of an era with the Steelers? Do I think they're going to fire Mike Tomlin? No. Despite what a lot of Steeler fans say, I do think Mike Tomlin's a good coach. But hey, I'm the guy who wanted to run John Harbaugh out of town, and it's probably a good thing the Ravens didn't listen to me. Because since that time, they've done pretty well. Look, that's how fans are. Fans get tired of the same things. They get tired of the same excuses. But I think Mike Tomlin's won enough football games where he's earned the opportunity to come back and rebuild this thing if he wants to. He may not want to. The problem for the Steelers is they either need to play with an aging Ben Roethlisberger or they don't really have a quarterback of the future. Mason Rudolph, I don't buy into it. I don't think the Steelers buy into it. Could they come back with him next year and let him play out his rookie deal and maybe be terrible and get a top pick? Sure, that's possible. Do I think it'll happen? Who knows? But that's where the Steelers are right now. You know, are there great quarterbacks in free agency you can go get? I don't know, because even if you're going to sign like a vet, you know, let's say Roethlisberger retires, or quits or is traded. Regardless of if he doesn't play, he's going to count $22 million against the Steelers' salary cap next year. The Steelers are already over the cap by like $40 million, and the cap's supposed to drop next year. So the Steelers are going to be over the cap. They don't have a lot of contracts that they can move, but obviously if you're 38 or 39 million over the cap and Ben doesn't play, that takes 20 million off, you're getting there. The Steelers aren't going to have a lot of money to get a lot better. They're going to have to build through the draft, but they don't have a quarterback. They're an aging team. They're getting older. Their offensive line is older. They were a great piece of that team. And look, their window of opportunity when they had Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown and Ben Roethlisberger and a really good offensive line, and they didn't take advantage of it, and that's pro sports. They were competitive, they were winning games, they were winning the division, but they didn't get the job done, which is win a Super Bowl. They haven't won a Super Bowl since the 2008 season, so it's time for another rebuild. But there's one thing I'll say about the Pittsburgh Steelers: they always rebuild and they rebuild quick. Cleveland Browns are moving on. Baker Mayfield is stepping up as a leader. People may not like him, but you know what? Baker Mayfield's a good guy. There is an amazing video going around on social media about a Browns fan who was terminally ill, and his final wish was to, he really wanted to meet Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield found out about it, and his wife found out about it. Or I can't remember if he's married or if it's his girlfriend. But either which way, she reached out to him, and they organized an opportunity for this man to watch the Browns game in a suite. In a suite that Baker Mayfield's wife was going to be sitting in. He watched the game with Baker Mayfield's wife, and he got the whole experience of being in a luxury suite. And then after the game, Baker Mayfield came out, met him, talked to him, hugged him. They were both wearing masks, being safe, social distance. They hugged, they took selfies together, and Mayfield talked football with them. So, Mayfield's a competitor. He's a leader. He wants to help his team win. Does he do a couple things that may be juvenile? Yeah, but you know what? So what? So what? He plays hard. He cares about his teammates. He cares about the team. I don't like Mayfield because he's got to play the Ravens twice a year, and I don't like that because he's a good player. And I got a lot of respect for him. It's nice to see Cleveland competitive. After being down for so long, I mean, people say, oh, who cares? Well, what if it were your team and you were losing for that long? It's got to suck. They went 0-16 a couple of years ago. That's brutal. 0-16, not one win. Hell, even the Jets this year won 2 games. Good Lord. So the Browns are off for a date with the Kansas City Chiefs. Do I think the Browns have a chance? Yeah, they have a chance. But if they're going to win, they're going to have to win a shootout, because I think the Chiefs could struggle stopping the running game of the Browns, assuming the Browns line is healthy. But do I think the Browns can keep up with the Chiefs and score points? Doubtful. Do I think Cleveland will be that effective on offense 2 weeks in a row against... I mean, look, Pittsburgh got a great defense, but Pittsburgh didn't look ready to play. They didn't look like they had the emotion, the energy, the enthusiasm. Yeah, that 11-0 start seems like a long time ago. And people said as they were 11-0, I was one of them, I didn't think they were an 11-0 team. They were probably a 10-6 team and got a couple of more wins than they should have. They may have even been a 9-7 team. But look, at the end of the day, they were 11-0, but they didn't get it done. They fell apart at the end of the season, and that was that. So the Cleveland Browns are on. They're going to play the Chiefs. The Steelers going home. The one piece of advice I'd give to the Steelers' young receivers like Juju Smith-Schuster and Chase Claypool, shut your mouths, guys. Shut up. You haven't won anything. And you're talking way too much. Juju was talking trash all season, dancing on logos. And then today, Chase Claypool pulls out his TikTok and says, bad loss, but the Browns are going to get clapped next week, so it's all good. Well, maybe they are, but at least they got the chance to play next week, and you don't. You lost to that Browns team. Don't be talking smack when you're losing, when you lost. Don't be talking smack when your team fell apart at the end of the year. You're a bright young kid. You got a chance to have a great career. But shut up until you win something, please, and thank you. Okay, now let's move on to the main event. Now, it's the main. Why is it the main event? Depending upon where you're listening, simple. I'm in Baltimore. Baltimore Ravens. Ravens are alive. They live to see it fight another day. Lamar Jackson took the monkey off his back, got his first playoff win. The Ravens got their first playoff win with Lamar Jackson at quarterback. And the Ravens came out and did some things that they hadn't done in quite a while. There had been this streak of 21 consecutive times where 21 consecutive times, not 21 consecutive games, but 21 consecutive times the Ravens, when they had been down by 10, had failed to come back and win. Well, the Ravens took care of that Sunday because they spotted the Tennessee Titans a 10-0 lead and then came back and won the game 20-13. And the Ravens did it the good old-fashioned way with their defense, coming in against Derrick Henry, commonly referred to now as King Henry, the best running back in the NFL, who the week before needed 223 yards to amass 2,000 yards for the season, and he walked away with 250 yards. So King Henry finished the regular season with 2,027 yards. He ran roughshod over the Ravens in the playoffs last year. Earl Thomas is still having nightmares about getting beaten down by the straight arm, the stiff arm, whatever you want to call it, by Henry. I mean, Earl Thomas, that's the last game of Earl Thomas's career, most likely. And he got bitch slapped by Derrick Henry and is like a constant on every highlight reel for how he did it. He looked ridiculous. But Henry last year, 30 carries, 195 yards, a touchdown. Regular season this year, Henry ran for 133 yards, scored the game-winning touchdown. So the Ravens, had some things not in their favor. But here's what was interesting. Whenever the Ravens and the Steelers have played in the playoffs, and I believe it's been 4 times, 2000, 2003, 2008, and 2019, there were 2 games at each stadium. The road team has always won. So coming into this game, you had to wonder, would that continue? The Ravens went down to Nashville in 2000 in the division playoffs, and the heavily favored Titans, who had the 13-3 record, that was when they had Steve McNair and Eddie George. The Ravens, and the best defense in the history of the NFL, in my opinion, came down and just beat them up and won 28-10. 3 years later, as Jamal Lewis was a 2,000-yard rusher, and the Ravens had a real strong season and won the AFC. Was it the North at that point? I don't remember. North or Central. I can't remember when they went to 4 divisions. And Tennessee came in and whooped up the Ravens, knocked them right out of the playoffs. 2008, the Titans have the best record in football. They have a rookie, Chris Johnson. They had multiple running backs. They had a great situation with their team. And 14-2, great defense. And Ray Lewis, Ed Reed, and a rookie Joe Flacco came in and knocked them out of the playoffs. Number 1 seed, Titans were knocked out. Then last year, we all know what happened. We all remember what happened. The 14-2 Ravens, number 1 seed in the AFC, come and play the number 6 seed in the playoffs, and the Titans bitch slapped them. So not looking good. The Ravens had not played well against the Titans the last 2 games. But, what some people forget is the Ravens were very healthy coming into this game. When they lost to the Titans back in November, they didn't have Brandon Williams. They didn't have Calais Campbell. Jimmy Smith, I believe, was hurting at that point. The Ravens were not their full defense. And they even played pretty well without some of those guys. But they wore down the way everybody else does against Derrick Henry. Well, that didn't happen. The Ravens defense held the Titans to 209 yards of offense, 158 yards passing, 51 yards rushing. That was it. They held Derrick Henry to 18 carries, 40 yards. That's 2.2 yards per carry. That is called kicking your opponent and knocking them off. They beat them up. Matt Judon, Pernell McPhee, Tyus Bowser did an incredible job setting the edge, forcing everything back inside. The Ravens did a great job of playing their gaps, staying disciplined, controlling the line of scrimmage, not letting the offensive line get into them and move them backwards. The Ravens moved them forward. The Ravens looked like they were blocking the Titans line. They were getting penetration, they were contained, and they basically said to the Titans, if you're going to beat us, you're going to have to beat us throwing the ball. And the Titans tried. They had some success early on. Marlon Humphrey did not have his best football game. But if anybody wants to know why the Ravens re-signed Jimmy Smith last week, and I heard a lot of people say, why are they re-signing him? He's always hurt, blah, 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 blah. Well, let me tell you why they re-signed him. Because of what he did yesterday. Jimmy Smith, when he is healthy, and look, he's older, he's had some injury issues, but Jimmy Smith looked healthy. When Marlon Humphrey was struggling against A.J. Brown, I don't know if you picked this up, they flip-flopped and moved Jimmy Smith over to A.J. Brown. And A.J. Brown got a lot quieter, a lot quicker. And the Ravens just shut down the Titans offense. And then the Ravens did what they should have done last year in the playoffs and what they need to be doing throughout. If they're going to win, they need to be playing Lamar Jackson style of football. They need to be running the ball. They need to give Lamar Jackson opportunities to run the ball. They need to give him the opportunity to throw the ball. And look, the Ravens did what they had to do. Lamar Jackson was responsible for 316 yards of offense. Okay? He had 136 yards rushing with a 48-yard rushing touchdown, which was one of the best runs I've seen in years in the playoffs. Maybe the best run I've ever seen by a quarterback in the playoffs. And just every time Lamar has the ball, something crazy could happen. He's just fun to watch. And he's a good kid. Enjoy it. He threw the ball 17-24 for 179 yards. He did have a bonehead pick, and he said on national television, I threw that dumbass interception or that damn-ass interception, whatever he said. And, he basically said it was a bonehead pick. It happens. He threw deep. He didn't put the ball on the outside shoulder. He threw it inside. It was an easy opportunity for Malcolm Mouth Butler to get a pick. But Lamar rebounded. Greg Roman, I'll give him a lot of credit. He stayed the course. He didn't panic when they were down 10-0. They put the ball in Lamar's hands, and they drove down the field and scored points. And they got themselves back in that game. They kicked field goals when they needed to. They built a lead. The defense played big when they had to. Derek Wolfe had a critical sack when they needed one. Play of the game on defense, though, for as great as everything that they did against Derrick Henry, my favorite play was when Ryan Tannehill threw a pass and Jihad Ward tipped it back to Tannehill, who caught it and then was tackled and fell for a 10-yard loss. So he had a throw where he caught the ball and then had a 10-yard loss as a receiver. Oh, great. You don't get to see that very much. That was awesome. So also, I really want to talk about Malik Harrison and Patrick Queen. Those linebackers grew up. They really started to play good football. They really started to get some things done. And they did a lot of good things that they didn't do in the first game. So the Ravens look good. They're going off for a date with the Buffalo Bills. Should be an outstanding football game. I mean, the Bills are outstanding. They've got offense. They got defense. They've got a phenomenal quarterback, possibly the league MVP this year, and definitely deserves it. And quite frankly, the Ravens are coming in. They're on a 6-game winning streak. Their offense looks like it's gelling. The defense is gelling. The Bills' offense is gelling. The Bills' defense is gelling. It's going to be a great night Saturday night in Buffalo. It's going to be a lot of fun, and we're going to be able to forget about everything that's going on in the world for 3 hours and just enjoy some great football and have a lot of fun. Look, will it suck if the Ravens lose? Yeah, it will, because there's a lot of energy, a lot of emotion, and let's be realistic. The Ravens have a shot, minimal, to host the AFC Championship. First thing they need to do is they need to beat Buffalo. And that ain't going to be easy. Anyone who thinks I'd rather play Buffalo than Kansas City, well, you haven't watched Buffalo play enough this year. Buffalo's really good. And if you watched Buffalo play the Ravens last year, Buffalo did a pretty good job against the Ravens offense. And Buffalo didn't have Stephon Diggs on offense last year either. So the Ravens defense did a little bit better than they might this year. It's going to be a great game. That's what playoff football is all about. You want it to be competitive. You want it to be fun. You want to have the feeling I had at the end of the game yesterday, which was, is it over? Because I was exhausted. It was stressful. A lot of fun, though. A lot of fun. Gotta love playoff football. Gotta love it. Lots of fun. Going to be a great weekend. Again, you got the Browns and Chiefs. You got the Ravens and Bills on the AFC. You got the Fountain of Youth at quarterback. You got the Geriatric Club on the other side. You got Tom Brady and Drew Brees as the Saints play the Bucs. You got Aaron Rodgers and the Packers against the Rams. Old man Rodgers playing. Look, I'm not a Rodgers fan. I don't know why. I just don't think he's a particularly good guy. Anywho, I've been talking your ear off for an hour. It's time to hit the road. Thanks so much for partying with me tonight. Joining me for Monday Night Josh. Get back to that National Football game. Great seeing you. Talk to everyone soon. Bye-bye.